I was working at a bowling alley. I ran the restaurant at a bowling alley, and we had a television, and there came a very short clip of the president putting the Medal of Honor on Roger Donlon. And he just, standing so tall and so straight. And now, because of the military people in my family, I was very aware of what the Medal of Honor was. And I thought, wow, when I grow up, I'd like to be a soldier like him.
In 1965, after finishing high school, Sammy Davis enlisted in the Army. His father had been an artilleryman during World War II, and he volunteered to do the same. Upon the completion of training, he requested to be sent to Vietnam.
Our job was to provide close and continuous support to the infantry. That's the artilleryman's job. So we would sometimes have to fire almost continuously for 8 or 10 hours. As long as the enemy was attacking our infantrymen, you had to do your job. And then you may lay around for a day or 2 days and not do much. Then you cleaned everything and painted everything and polished your bullets. Sergeant James Gant from Lansing, Michigan, he was the meanest sergeant I ever seen in my life, and he would make us take each bullet out of our clip every night before it got dark and polish it. He was just a bitter old man. Sergeant Gant was 27 years old. He was just a bitter old sergeant, and that's why he was picking on us.
On November 18, 1967, Davis's unit was airlifted to a tiny island in the Mekong Delta near Kai Lay, Vietnam. American infantrymen were already heavily engaged in the area when Davis and his fellow gunners arrived.
So we landed at 8 o'clock in the morning. As soon as we spread the trails on the 105 howitzer, we started firing. And we fired the weapon all day. Just before dark, the enemy broke contact, so therefore we were able to quit firing, and a helicopter, one of our helicopters, came in and sat down, and a major got out. And he said, your probability of getting hit tonight is 100%. So prepare yourselves. He got back in his helicopter and away he went. At 2 o'clock exactly, and I remember because I looked at my watch, we heard mortars sliding down the tube, which is a very distinctive sound, and to hear them sliding down the tube, you got to be pretty close. And I said immediately, well, when did we move in mortars? And Hart said, we didn't. The mortars were just raining down. And at 2:30 exactly, the mortars quit. It was this eerie quiet. We looked at each other, and we heard whistles being blown like a coach has, and orders being shouted in English. And basically what they were saying was, go kill the GI. Sergeant Gant said, okay boys, this is it. So we grabbed a beehive round, set it on muzzle action, loaded it in the tube, and we were standing there at our position ready for him. I was waiting for Sergeant Gant to tell me to fire. Now, I knew not to fire until he said fire no matter what was happening, and I could see the enemy all around us. They were doing mass assault waves. Then he said fire, and I pulled the lanyard. Well, the weapon went off, did its job, but the enemy had set up a rocket right across the river from me. And when I fired, they fired at my muzzle blast. When it hit the shield, it blew me off the piece. It also hit Sergeant Gant right in the chest. And the last thing I can remember was Sergeant Gant just disappearing into the darkness. Well, the enemy started turning my howitzer around, supposedly to turn it and fire it at our guys. If I'd been awake, I would have known that our next gun back was going to fire a beehive round. Standing rule is you never let the enemy take control of the weapon. Common sense. But I was unconscious. So when the enemy started picking my howitzer up to fire it, Bill Few from Rising Sun, Ohio, fired the beehive. A beehive round effectively turns the 105 howitzer into a shotgun. It fires 18,000 little darts, beehive darts. From mid-thigh up to and including my fourth lumbar vertebra, I had about 30 beehive holes that just passed through me. I had a flak jacket on, which is the only thing that saved my back. When they fired the beehive at me, it woke me up, and I rolled over and I rolled face up in the bottom of my foxhole, and I'm looking up and I could see all these pretty lights going right over the top of my foxhole, and I thought, wow, it's just like Christmas. My hearing went like turning the stereo from 0 to 50. You know, went from hearing nothing within just a very short period of time. It got loud enough that the smoke started clearing out of my head, and I'm starting to realize what's happening, and those weren't just pretty lights, they were tracers. So I kind of raised up on one elbow, and I looked down, and there was 150 to 200 enemy right there. Well, I picked up my M16. I had 12 clips, which is roughly about 180 rounds. And I started doing my job as a soldier. It was just like living in a bad dream. You know, no matter what I did, it's like I wasn't doing nothing to them. It was a reinforced battalion. It was 1,500 against 42 kids. And they just kept coming. Well, I fired the last rounds, and I didn't think that I was probably going to see daylight, but I wasn't going to quit. You know, because I thought, well, if I don't do my job, those guys behind me ain't got a chance. So I thought, well, I'll see if I can get off one round from the howitzer. So I scrounged around, found a beehive round, set it on muzzle action, found the canister that had not been fired, had to find the powder because we'd had everything set up nice and orderly, and naturally the mortars had blown everything askew. Now the enemy's still doing their job. I mean, they're everywhere. So I was having to hide and lay in the water, and they'd run over me, and finally when I found all the components and I loaded the piece, I pulled the lanyard. The gun didn't go off. It went, when I pulled the lanyard, it went pop, and my heart just sunk, you know, because this was my last effort. But I could feel the gun kind of going. And then it went off, and it went boom. I had overcharged it. Figured I was only going to get one round. I wanted it to be maximally effective, so I filled the canister full of loose powder. Later they told me, says, yeah man, we thought that you had rigged up some kind of big flamethrower or something because of all that wet powder. That's why it didn't go off immediately. Well, I was still alive. I thought, well, maybe I can get off one more round. Well, I one more rounded it until I had heard someone across the river shouting, "Don't shoot, I'm a GI." And I seen Gwendell Holloway, my brother, standing up waving these boonie hats saying, "Don't shoot, I'm a GI." And I said, my God, somebody's got to go get him. By this point, my body was in real feeble condition, and I knew I couldn't just run down there and swim across the river. So I thought, well, I'll find an air mattress. That's what the Army had given us to sleep on. So I crawled down to the river, swam across the river, stashed the air mattress in the bushes, and started making back to where I'd last seen Gwendell standing. There was a foxhole there. And instead of just one man being in it, there were 3 men in it. Well, I knew I didn't have the strength to make 3 trips. It had taken me about 45 minutes to make that trip over to that point. And I was just getting so tired. So I asked the man above to give me the strength to carry all 3 of my brothers at one time.
Despite his massive injuries and the unremitting ferocity of the Viet Cong attack, Davis made 2 agonizing trips across the river, shuttling his wounded companions to relative safety.
They pulled Jim up on the bank and started doing what they could for him, and I started crawling back to help Bill Few's guys when I came across my Mino Sergeant Gant. About half his body was in water, had this big hole in his chest, and he couldn't talk, but he picked his hand up. And I thought, my sergeant wants me to hold his hand. So I kind of crawled up and I grabbed a hold, and I still was hoping that he was going to tell me what to do next, you know. And I grabbed a hold of his hand and I looked down in his eyes. The light bulb that comes on in your head that your daddy always told you about, the light bulb came on. All these things that he had, polishing the bullet, the beehive round, setting the time fuse on it, setting out in 100-degree heat with a blindfold. Sergeant Gant shared with us the things that he knew was going to help us survive. And when I looked down in his eyes, I knew that he didn't hate me, that he loved me. You got to love somebody a whole lot to pick on them and teach them things. Jim Deister was one of the last people that we loaded on the helicopters. He was with our dad. The medic in the helicopter seen a bubble come up through the chest wound that Jim had in his chest. He'd been shot in the chest also. And took his stethoscope off and put it on his heart and had a heartbeat. And Jim Deister is alive and well today, living in Salina, Kansas. I got to hold Jim Deister's grandbabies. What an awesome feeling, knowing that if I hadn't done my job when I was just a kid, that this precious little thing would not be here. There were 11 of us left standing that morning out of the 42 that started, 12 counting me. The other 11 men are the men that put me in for this. I didn't do anything heroic. I did my job. That's what soldiers do. And if there was one of these given that night, there should be at least 42 of them. Because if any one of us had not done their job, there would be none of us alive. It sounds silly perhaps to say that I went to war and found out about love. What real love is? I didn't go to war to kill people. I went to war because I loved my daddy. I wanted him to be proud of me. I went to war because I loved my grandpas and I loved my country. And when I got over there, the reason why we fought so hard was because we discovered we loved each other, that we were all we had. And they became brothers. We became brothers. And that's lasted up, it's been 36 years, and those men that I fought with are still my brothers. So I learned about what real love is.
Welcome, students, staff, and honored guests. I don't think there could be a better entry to a program than what we've just witnessed. In all my years, 25, in this wonderful corporation, I can't imagine that there would ever have been an opportunity presented to us like today, or there will be another. And I am completely honored and humbled today to bring our guests to you. We had that great opportunity for this introduction. And so summarizing a biography of this man, I'm not even going to attempt to do. But I do want you to know that he grew up in Dayton, Ohio, with a loving family and was a transplanted Hoosier, just like me, from Ohio to Indiana. And I want you to know what you've heard, that I'm sure when he was in school, many thoughts went through his head on what the future might look like. Things started to formulate with his upbringing and his family, and as he explained, Sammy Davis was a very humble man. He still is today. And he wanted to join his brothers in continuing the freedoms that still exist for us today. Quickly, very quickly, an unprecedented act of heroism was in the moment, just as he had been trained. Sammy L. Davis placed the needs of others above his own. With no further ado, please join me in giving a warm Warsaw welcome to Mr. Sammy L. Davis and his beautiful wife, Dixie. I present to you Sammy and Dixie Davis.
Good morning.
You should never give me a microphone.
What I wish to do is to answer your questions. I've got a 9-page speech I could read, or I can answer your questions. I prefer that. Do y'all?
You need to be on the mic.
Can you hear me? Cool. I'll get on the mic. Can you hear me now? Being quite serious, I prefer answering whatever questions that you have. And I will tell you anything that you ask, except where my secret fishing hole is. So who's got, yes, sir? I'm really hard of hearing.
We have people online here, so we're
Excellent.
Yay!
Excellent.
How did it feel when the president saluted you?
Saluted me?
Yeah.
Awesome. I had been trained how to do many things in the military, but I had never received any training on how to go to the White House and meet the president. So the footage that you've seen, how many of you here seen the movie? Forrest Gump? Most of you have. That's my original footage. When the president's putting the Medal of Honor around Forrest, that's actually my film footage. That's actually me. They just put Tom's face over mine. Just before the ceremony, the president there were 5 recipients that day. Each of us were the first living from our particular field of service. And he took us into one of the little rooms there off the White House and asked questions. And he said, well, son, he didn't call me son, he called me private, sergeant, I was sergeant then. And he said, well, sergeant, I've got a small ranch just a few miles south of where you're stationed at. I was stationed at Fort Hood, Texas at the time. And he said, and he pulled a card out of his pocket, and he said, come see me anytime you want to. 90 miles away was where his ranch was, and it wasn't a small ranch. It was about the size of Iowa. I'm teasing. It was a very nice ranch. I got to go down there at least 3 or 4 times, as I remember it. The president was never there because he was president, but Lady Bird was there because I would call first, and she'd come on down, come on down. Lady Bird loved wild flowers, and she had planted wildflowers from all over the world, all over their ranch, and that's what we would go for a walk. She'd say, well, Sam, let's go for a walk. And we'd walk, and she'd tell me what this flower was and where she got it from. And then we got to be very good friends. We always called the president, so I got to talk to the president on the phone, which was cool. I believed in the president 100%. I've had the privilege of meeting every president since Lyndon Johnson. Most of them, can't say all, but most of them have become friends. Who?
He really went down to the ranch to meet the daughters.
What other countries have you been to?
What other countries have I been to? I've had the privilege of going to almost every country in the world. Which, that means some of the little bitty ones I haven't had the privilege, but most of the countries, and wherever there's military, I've been there. Because the military takes me in all over the world to talk to the troops. It's one of the reasons why I'm here, is to talk to you all this morning. What?
It's really nice to talk to a group that knows hua.
I'm sorry. Dixie says I say hua way too much, but in military talk, for those of you that are not military, hua means do you concur? And if you do concur and I say hua, you go hua back, because that means yes, I understand. Hua.
When I first met him, I thought he was saying hula.
Well, I was. Would you hula? We can't go there, I'm sorry. Next question.
So what did it feel like when you got like the
I
Medal
can't
of
hear you,
Honor?
sir.
Closer.
So what did it feel like when they put the Medal of Honor around your neck?
What did it feel like? Well, like I have said earlier, I was really, really frightened. I didn't know what to expect. And here's the President of the United States putting the Medal of Honor around my neck. And I was so honored and so scared. It was awesome.
Did it feel heavy?
Well, at the time it did not feel heavy, but I've had it now since 1968, and I can tell you it does get heavy because it doesn't really belong to me, it belongs to you. So I have to wear this every day how I would think that you would wear it. And that can get heavy because I love and respect y'all. Who? Yes, sir.
Sir, I have a question about your early life. Whenever you were a teenager, what was the highest rank that you achieved in Boy Scouts?
What was the highest rank I achieved in Boy Scouts?
Yes, sir.
Eagle Scout.
Yep, I'm an Eagle.
Hula. Hula.
Cool. Dixie and I went back with one of the three men that I swim across the river for, Jim Deister and his wife Rita. We went back in 2016. And we got to go to every place where I had been stationed in Vietnam. We got to go to Fire Base Cudgel, which was where I actually earned this. Jim still had an original, he was infantry, and he still had the original map of that operation that we were out on, and it had grid coordinates on it. And on my cell phone, I poked the grid coordinates into my cell phone, and the blue dot lit up. And so here we're, moving a few feet here and a few feet here, and watch the little dot, and then we're standing on the exact spot. That was, my cell phone doesn't work at home because we live way out in the country, but it worked in Vietnam. Yes, sir. I'm sorry, sir? Who's your favorite president that you met? Who is the favorite president? Well, all of them. It's been an honor to know. The current president, Donald Trump, I've known for over 25 years. And I believe in Donald Trump. He's a good man. You know exactly what's on his mind because he has no filter. What you don't have to, well, I wonder what he's really thinking. No, that is what he's really thinking. That just comes out.
Sammy, I'm going to ask a question, if I could, over here.
Oh, yes, sir.
You talked about going back to Vietnam, and we had some interesting table talk last night at dinner. Would you explain to the cadets how the cuisine may have changed from when you were serving to when you went back as guest in 2016?
The cuisine in Vietnam?
Yes, sir.
It pretty much remained the same.
We ate with the locals all the time.
Yes.
And I have no clue what I was eating. They always said it was chicken, but I don't know.
In Vietnam, they eat a lot of ducks because down in southernmost portion of Vietnam, it's all like swampland, so they raise lots of millions and millions of ducks. So you eat a lot of duck. They have a lot of snakes, big snakes, 18, 20-foot snakes. I can remember the first time that one of our Vietnamese soldiers on our side, one of our Vietnamese soldiers asked if I wanted a bite of this anaconda. And I'm thinking, wow. Now I was hungry, but I wasn't that hungry. Well, he was roasting it over a little, y'all know what C4 is? It's plastic explosives. We couldn't build a fire because a fire creates smoke and they can see it and smell it, and the enemy. But the C4, when you light it, it doesn't create any smoke. It doesn't, there's no real, you can't see C4 burn, but it's extremely hot. And he was roasting this nice hunk of anaconda on a piece of bamboo, sliver of bamboo, and he was roasting it, and he asked me if I would like to have a bite. And I'm thinking, do I want to eat snake? I thought, well, since he's being nice, I will act like I'm just taking a bite, just kind of. And when I got it up to my nose, I go, wow, man, that smells really good. I thought, well, I love anaconda. I mean, seriously, it's just beautiful white meat. Along its back is like big tenderloins all the way down, and they're easy to skin, easy to clean. You just take your thumb and go, and that, on this snake, it was about that big around and like 10 foot long. That'll feed a lot of troops. Whoa.
Thank you. I have a question here.
There are no grocery stores. Everything is outside on the street.
Yep.
Meat will be hanging. Every once in a while, they shoo away the flies. But the fruits are fantastic. And we were in this little bus that was probably like for 12 people. And we were driving, this was in Ho Chi Minh City, which was originally Saigon. And I could see ahead, and the sidewalks were silver for like several blocks. And I kept watching, and I said, what in the world? I said, I need a picture of this. As soon as they opened the bus door, they were drying sardines on the sidewalks. And the smell was awful. It did not take me long to take a photo. But it's just so, it's not what we're used to at all. We're used to all the conveniences of living in America. And every day, there's no refrigeration, so every day they have to go to the market and buy what they want for that day. So it was a big eye-opener for somebody that's been really, we live in privilege here. And I think a lot of times we don't realize how privileged we are because we've not been anywhere else to see what somebody else lives like.
That's one of the unique things about being in the military and traveling all over the world. I grew up as a poor country boy. I thought I was poor. We always had something to eat. We may not have had any money in our pocket, but we always had plenty to eat. Farm kids. And traveling around the world, I've had the privilege. We're not poor, we're rich. Have any of y'all here ever been hungry? What? A couple, I understand. Traveling to all these different countries and having the honor of meeting the countrymen and how hungry they are. They truly, too many truly don't have enough food to eat, so you would share your sea rations with you. In Vietnam, we would eat monkey. Everybody goes, oh, monkey. You've never been hungry. Because monkey really tastes pretty good. We ate rats. How many of you here ever ate a squirrel? Who? These rats were as big as cats. And there you go. The first one was but I was hungry. And it was just like eating squirrel. Eating rat tastes just like squirrel. We found the secret: don't eat a rat that lives around a dump, a GI trash dump, because they taste strong. But when you catch a real jungle rat, man, they taste good.
There's a question back here.
Yes.
So, besides winning the Medal of Honor, what do you think your biggest accomplishment was?
My biggest accomplishment was figuring out what brotherhood, sisterhood is. That was one of the things that we learned in the military, and sometimes the media gets carried away today. It's not the color of your skin that's important, it's what's in your heart. And in the military, that was one of the things that the military taught me was, it's in your heart that counts, it's not the color of skin. Two of the men that I swam across the river for were black. That was just brothers. You do for your brothers what you knew they'd do for you. Who?
Any of our guests from Notre Dame, anyone have a question? We can come back to you if you like, but feel free. Got one back in the corner. How fast can I get back there? Oh, there we go. Notre Dame.
What one trait or characteristic would you identify that most successful leaders share?
I'm sorry, sir, I couldn't understand.
What one trait or characteristic would you identify that most successful leaders share?
The knowledge that you don't lose until you quit trying. No matter what you're faced with in life, you do not lose until you quit trying. That's another one of the things that the military, well, my mama taught me as a little one, but I carried that with me in my heart, and that's where I found out that it's a fact that, Sammy Lee, you don't lose till you quit trying. I never quit trying, and I've never lost. What?
I call it just being stubborn.
That's part of it.
Okay, young lady, you're up.
What do you think of the JROTC program?
Say again?
What do you think about the JROTC program in schools?
I love it. I love it. What an opportunity to have young people get involved with each other and our nation, and the knowledge that you find out is priceless, in my opinion, because of the camaraderie, and you all have a special camaraderie between you, don't you? Well, it's a common understanding, and I love it. Thank you all for being a member.
And we found that ROTC kids always, I would say 99%, become very successful in
Yes.
whatever they choose to do, whether it's military or not. But they have that quality that a lot of other people are missing. So thank you for choosing this program, because I've seen
Yes.
what happens with the people that graduate from this and go on to really greater things in their
It
lives.
helps you rise above all the rest of the world. This is my opinion. By being in the military, your heart, mind, and soul is higher.
When you were holding your sergeant's hand after he'd been hit and coming back with the jazz, what were you feeling like when you first saw him?
Love. And up till that point, I didn't think it was okay to love your old sergeant. But when he was laying there and he was looking at me and he was trying to talk, and I grabbed a hold of his hand, that's when I realized that he didn't hate me, he loved me. And that I didn't hate him, I loved him. Sergeant Gant recovered. He just passed last year, unfortunately, but he lived all these years, God bless him, and touched a lot more people, because he was always the mean old sergeant. But he was a good, mean old sergeant.
This hand has been up forever.
Yes, sir.
What was Ronald Reagan like, and how did you meet your wife?
What was Ronald Reagan like? I've had the privilege of knowing every president, and Ronald Reagan was my favorite. Ronald and Nancy treated me like family. They would send the little plane to pick me up to go talk to troops all over the world, and I won't say every case, but most cases, they would travel with me, or I would travel with them. The president doesn't travel with you, you travel with him. But I got to spend a lot of personal time with them, and I loved them. Good people, very good people.
Question back here.
Did you push yourself to get done with the stuff that you had to do?
I'm sorry, I couldn't understand.
Did you have to push yourself to get to your limits?
Help me.
I'll help you with that, Sammy. Did you feel that you had to push yourself to get things done that needed to be done?
Well, of course, you always have to push yourself to do what's right to get things done. Don't y'all? Don't think I'm the only one. I've always got to push myself, because I'd rather be fishing.
Got one right here.
Over the years, how proud are you that you went to go save your comrades whenever they were stuck in the ditch?
Extremely proud. I personally feel that the one above gave me the strength to do that, because I had 30 of those beehive in me. My back was broke, my ribs were crushed, I was shot with an AK-47 in the right thigh, but when I looked over there and seen Gwendell, at that time I thought he was the only one, because Gwendell stood up and waved his boonie hat at me. And I thought, well, I got to go get him. You know, I know my brother would come get me if I was over there. So when I got over there, and I finally made my way to the foxhole. Now the enemy were still doing their job. They were doing mass assault waves, and I would work my way through them. When I came up on the area where when I'd last seen Gwendell, and came up on the foxhole, there were 3 men in the foxhole. Well, we could see what the enemy was and had been doing to our wounded and injured, and I couldn't leave my brothers there because I knew what the enemy was going to do to them. So I had to carry them all. So with my body in the shape that it was, well, I asked the one above to give me the strength, and he did. And I put Jim Deister. We thought Jim Deister was dead. He was shot through the head. Bullet went in here and came out just below this ear, and he was also shot right through the chest, but it missed his spine. I pulled Jim Deister up across my shoulders, picked up Billy Ray, picked up Gwendell, and started making my way back to the riverbank again. Gwendell still had 3 clips of ammunition for his M16. So when the enemy would start doing their mass assault wave again, they would run. I would lay the guys down, I would lay on top of them and watch. And most of the enemy were just like us, young kids, young soldiers doing their job. Their sergeant said, charge. So that's what they were doing. They were charging. And they would literally run over us. Now there were a lot of enemy dead on that side of the river. But we were laying in with them, and because we were laying there looking like we were dead, they didn't bother us. But I would watch their eyes. And when they would come up on me, and when I could see that they recognized me for what we were, I would do my job as a soldier. After I had expended the 3 clips of ammunition, and we still weren't back to the river's edge yet, well, I threw the M16 in the river because Sergeant Gant said, don't let the enemy take control of your weapon. So I threw the M16 in the river. And when we finally made it back to the riverbank, well, the first one that I pulled across was Jim Deister, because I found my little piece of air mattress that I'd stuffed on that side of the riverbank, and I laid Jim up on it. His head was in the water. I mean, it was just a miracle that he did survive, because I thought he was dead. And when we got to our side of the bank, well, 2 of my guys jumped in and pulled him out, and I went back across. Well, Billy Ray and Gwendell could both hang on to that little piece of air mattress. Oh, the only thing of the air mattress that held air was the pillow part, but that was enough to give you flotation. You don't lose till you quit trying, and we just simply did not quit trying. Billy Ray Crawford has passed. Gwendell still lives in Stockton, California, and he's doing fair. Jim Deister lives in Salina, Kansas, and he's doing awesome. He gets around better than me. His brain is sharper than mine. Well, like I said in the video, I've got to hold Jim Deister's grandbabies, and there's no greater feeling. You know, my body hurts, but there's no greater feeling than knowing in my heart that if I hadn't swum across that river and got those boys, that these babies sitting on my lap would not be here. So when we're there together, it makes you feel good.
They're not even babies anymore.
No, now they're your age.
This guy wanted to know how you met your wife.
How did I meet my wife?
The most important question. That was mine.
Well, Dixie and I have been married.
You can tell it, but I'll correct you when you.
Oh, yes, ma'am. Yeah. We've been married 15 years. Dixie's husband was a 3-tour Navy medic in Vietnam.
Corman.
Yes, ma'am, Corman. My wife of 38 years, Tim, which we were friends, Tim and I had known each other for many years. Tim passed away, and then 4 years later?
5.
Peggy Jo passed away from cancer. Tim passed away from Agent Orange cancer. My wife passed away from cancer. Now, we had been friends, and I just emailed one day checking on Dix, how you doing?
I lived in Texas, and they lived in Illinois. We weren't exactly next door neighbors.
Right. Yeah, I hadn't seen her for many years, but that started the communication, and finally the Freedom Fest was the first thing you came to, wasn't it?
Yep.
The Skidmore, Missouri, which is north of Kansas City, has a freedom, well, they used to, they don't anymore. They had a Freedom Fest for like 25 years, and veterans from all over the United States would come and celebrate freedom. And I was going to be the speaker there, and I asked Dixie, well, have you ever thought about coming? Well, no, but I talked her into it. And so that's where we met up for the first time in years and years and years and years. And
it was very uncomfortable. We had to meet in front of like 3,000 or 4,000 friends that both knew our spouses that had passed away.
Yep.
And it was a very interesting weekend. And girls, you need to know this. He's the most romantic person in the entire world.
Ooh.
And there's always people on stage, and there were bleachers set up and tables and meeting tents and things. And everybody was there. Sam plays harmonica, by the way, and he was playing with the band. And he laid his harmonica down, and he walked across this great big grassy area and asked me to dance. And I said, no. There was nobody out there dancing. And I said, no, no, no. And of course, being persistent, I guess is a nice way to say it, I finally relented, and we got up and danced, and everybody applauded. It was so sweet. And I was so embarrassed. But a year later, we got married there on stage.
At the next Freedom
Fest. So it was
Fest.
kind of cool. And Colonel Hopper, Earl Hopper, his son was the first recognized POW from Vietnam. My parents, my dad had passed away by then, so he said he would walk me down the aisle. He's in a wheelchair, so.
But he had a shotgun.
He showed up with a shotgun across his lap, so that was just an idea of how everything went. The singer was singing a beautiful song, and a moth flew into her mouth. And then when we were doing our vows, this great big old grasshopper jumped up on Sam's butt, and then it jumped up and hit me in the eye. So, and then the minister called me by his wife's name.
Which the minister knew my wife,
So
Peggy
it
Jo.
was a great wedding.
But so far, it's been 15 years.
And every time he sees me, he still apologizes. And I said, it was an honor. It's okay.
Reverend John Steer.
Don't worry.
Young man, I'd like to let you know that Sammy addresses his wife by ma'am and yes ma'am. There's a lot of yes ma'ams, and I think that's the key to a good, healthy life. Men, young men, I'm still going to pound that in. Young men, it's a big key. Yes, ma'am. We have a couple more questions, and then we're going to work to tie things up. I have one back here.
Were you enlisted or drafted?
I didn't get that.
Were you enlisted, or were you drafted?
I enlisted.
Very good.
There were 5 of us. I was going to Mooresville High School, we were getting ready to graduate, and all of us had jobs, but we all wanted to join the Marine Corps. So we got out of school just a little bit early this day. We left. And drove up to Indianapolis to the recruiting station, and 5 of us walked in the recruiting station. Well, there were these big lines. Army and Marine Corps, Navy, wasn't very many in the Navy, but the Army line was tremendous. And the Marine Corps line had 30 or 40 people in it. We're standing in the Army line, and the Army line was not progressing. The Marine Corps line kept moving, kept moving, kept moving, kept moving. We could be there about an hour, and then all 5 of us had to go back to work in Mooresville after school job. So we had it planned. Well, if things weren't going to plan, we were in the Marine Corps line, And when we ran out of time, we just stepped over in the Army line because it was moving pretty good. And we joined on the buddy plan, actually. 5 of us did. So it worked out great.
The shortest line, and look where it led you.
Yes, sir.
Outstanding.
And they
Okay.
never saw each other again after the
Well, we
enlistment.
did see each other, but we didn't get stationed with one another.
Okay, very good. Have one more question here, sir?
What's your favorite memory with your troops?
What's my favorite memory with the troops?
Correct.
Well, I have a lot of favorite memories. With the troops, just the things that I learned early on in the military is still with me in my heart. I thought I understood what love was, and I did. But when I went into the military and the people that you share combat experiences with, you learn to love them. And it's a different kind of love, perhaps, but it's so deep. I mean, those men and women that we shared love with in Vietnam was phenomenal, and that keeps building my heart today. And it helped bring me to be the man that I ended up being today. Well, I'm not done yet, but it helped me be the person that I am today, and it taught me about what real love is.
Thank you very much. One of our educators, Mr. Clark, would like to address you.
It's a pleasure to meet you, sir. I served 22 years in the Air Force, retired.
Awesome.
So I'm not going to take it against you, even though the Air Force is the best, sorry. The question I really have, this is my 19th year teaching, and what's one big piece of advice that you can give these young students today when they're getting ready to graduate, walk out in the big world? What's the best advice you can give them?
To realize that no matter what you face, you don't lose until you quit trying. You will be scorned, you will be beat down, but know in your heart that you don't lose until you quit trying. That's been one of the things that has continued in my heart and kept me going. Sammy Lee, you don't lose till you quit trying, and I've never quit trying. Whoa. And I want each of you to know that I'm so very proud of you for wearing that uniform. And I do understand that it's not always the easiest thing to do, because there are some that don't understand. But I do understand, and I'm extremely proud of you for doing it. Thank you.
Leonard, can you go to the next slide? The other thing that I've learned is that we have just had about 40 minutes of up close and personal with an incredible man and his lovely wife. Incredible. And I want to thank you for how you've come into today. And I hope that you've taken some things away. When you are around people who, whether it's a Medal of Honor recipient or whether it's any other person who just might be a little older, just might be a little wiser, know for a fact that they've lived a little more life than you have. And there's always something that you can take from that. With these two fine individuals, they have both authored their own books, a little deeper look at the life of Sammy. You don't lose unless you quit trying. I think in many words you hear that every morning after the Pledge of Allegiance as we talk about the golden rule, about treating others as the way that we'd like to be treated. You also have a very interesting perspective because Dixie wrote a book as the wife of a Medal of Honor recipient and her experiences, and also talking about second chances. So we do have some books outside. If you're interested, we are going to get some for the Media Center, so they'll be here, available to be checked out. There's information up top, and we can talk about that when we exit. But at this time, I'm going to ask our guests if they have any closing comments for this morning. I hope you were okay with the format. I felt like, one, I apologize that we were late to the party. We missed
Sam was talking.
our wonderful, imagine that there were people talking to him too. But we missed our wonderful performance from the choir, and we thank Mrs. Petrie and all the folks in the select choir for that. And our military presentation of the colors is second to none. We do a great job. I really want to thank, John Mitchell. I want to thank Fred Joselis and the wonderful job that they do leading and guiding and directing you young people in our JROTC program. Dr. Hoffer had a vision, and part of his vision was to make this part of the curriculum come alive. And we're really dependent on you to really carry that brotherhood and that love to a different dimension, how you carry yourselves in school. And I'm talking to all of the students in the building, not just those that are seated here. I'd like to thank our members from Notre Dame and your future service, and going to one of the best schools in the nation, outside of Ohio State, but that's okay. One of the best schools in the nation, and then also doing it for something bigger with the opportunity to serve. So thank you for coming down and being good examples to these young people. We really appreciate it. We definitely are blessed to have some of our own veterans here today. Thank you for coming, folks from the American Legion. We have State Representative Nisley here today, and it's not like his schedule is just wide open all the time, and he found time to be here today. So again, I want to thank Dr. Hoffert, our school corporation, for allowing us to bring Sammy here. Incredible. Would you two like to wrap things up?
Do I have time to play a song?
You do.
Sam, just a minute, I want to say something.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Akers said something about being older and having wisdom. Now, that's not because you get smarter as you get older. What it means is you've made so many mistakes in your life. And the thing that gains that wisdom is what you do after you make that mistakes. Some people just, okay, I can't do this. And then there's some that say, I need to take a different approach, or I realize I need to do something different. And then it's doing it. Not waiting for it to happen, but doing it.
You don't lose till you quit trying.
So, like Sam, I'm so proud of you all for being here and what you're doing with your lives. It gives us such hope for America and how great our country will continue to be, because you are our future. We're the old people now, but now it's all about you and how you conduct yourselves and the choices you make to keep our country strong. So thank you for having us. It's been really a big pleasure to be here.
Just excellent. I learned how to play a harmonica in Vietnam. And I'll try to shorten the story as much as I can. When you're in a combat situation and you have to write home to your mama every day, which our sergeant said you got to write home to your parents every day, well, what do you write? I was uncomfortable in writing to her about what was really going on in a combat situation, so I would write about all those little ducks that we had. And I'm not an artist, but I'd draw pictures of the little ducks, with their feet standing, up in the air, going down and getting mud off the bottom, and have just a short comment on how the mud felt, how the mud smelled. And I just have a few lines, but every day I could hand my sergeant the letter that we had to write every day. Well, Mom, after getting these kind of letters for a while, she thought that I must be really bored. So she sent me a harmonica, and I got this package in the mail. It was the original harmonica, which is in the Medal of Honor Museum in Patriot Point, South Carolina, was a double-sided, double octave Hohner. And I thought it was Mom's candy. I thought she'd sent me some cookies, because Mom was famous for a cookie. So I was all excited, but you didn't reach and grab for it until the sergeant handed you your package. So when he handed me the package, man, it was just brown paper wrapper, and I opened it up, and there was this harmonica box. I was so bummed out because it wasn't cookies. I just
With a note.
put it in my pocket.
With the note on it.
Yeah, when I opened the brown paper package on the box, it said, "Son, I hope this helps you be not quite so bored." I stuck it in my pocket, went back to my foxhole, and hadn't been sitting there very long, and one of my sergeants, Johnston Dunlap, he was E6. It was his job to walk around making sure that we were all doing our job and not sleeping or whatever. But he come walking past, and he said, "Private Davis." And I said, "Yes, Sergeant." "Did your mother send you a harmonica?" And I pulled out. I said, "Yes, Sergeant." He said, "Well, play Shenandoah for me." Well, Sergeant Dunlap, I don't know how to play Shenandoah. What I meant was, I don't know how to play this thing, but he thought I just didn't know how to play the song Shenandoah. Well, when an E6 asks a private to play the harmonica, now, we were artillery. We were sitting out in the middle of the jungle, and infantry enemy was all around us, but they knew where we were because we were artillery. So it was okay that I was sitting there, I was watching, making sure they weren't trying to sneak up on us. And this is what the sergeant told me later. He said, "Sam, at the very least, the enemy knew that you weren't asleep." Well, because I'd be sitting there, 3 o'clock in the morning, trying to pick out Shenandoah. After a couple weeks, you could hear you could see what I was trying to play, or hear what I was trying to play, and it got pretty good. Well, all the guys started commenting on it, and Sergeant Dunlap thanked me. He said, "Shenandoah is my favorite song because I used to sit on this bluff and look up the Shenandoah Valley." And he said, "Sam, when you're playing that for me, it's like I'm home, and I'm sitting there looking up the Shenandoah Valley. So thank you." I would like to play Shenandoah for y'all here today, and I hope that it finds a place in your heart that brings you peace and strength when you need it.
Why don't you stand up to get away from
Yeah.
the mic? Yeah.
Now imagine this in Vietnam. So y'all are among a good audience. Cool.
Thank you again. Thank you,
Take care
sir.
of each other. How proud I am of you.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. That's a great send-off. Thank you. Thank you. We've just experienced an absolute historic experience that I hope that you treasure for the rest of your lives.